I've seen a lot of people comparing the birth of Jesus to the refugee problem and saying Jesus was a refugee too. Now, although as Christians we need to have compassion and empathy for others, the compassion that comparing Jesus to it is not accurate or right.
Amen.
You see, when Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem, they did it as obedient citizens in the Roman Empire. Then they were to be counted on Augustus Caesar's census. And when they went to Egypt, they were still traveling within the Roman Empire, since even Egypt was under the rule of Caesar. They went there to escape Herod, who did not have jurisdiction there. It was probably more like traveling state to state today, not country to country. Of course, this whole journey from Bethlehem to Egypt and back to Nazareth was not what Mary and Joseph envisioned for their lives. But it was God's agenda. God has His own agenda for our lives as well. And that agenda may be different than what we ever expected. After the wise men showed up at the doorstep of Mary and Joseph, God was going to change everything they thought they knew. Thanks to the shepherds, everybody in Bethlehem knew about Jesus. Probably everybody had stopped by to see Him. Bethlehem was a very small town. That you can imagine that happening in a small town. Everybody came to check out the baby. The Bible does not record Mary and Joseph's reaction when the wise men showed up. But you know that Bethlehem was probably just buzzing about the strangers with their strange clothes and their gifts. That doesn't happen every day in a small town. Even if Mary and Joseph took this visit in stride, after all, what can you expect if your baby is king? The event had a profound effect on Joseph. And that night, after the wise men left, he had a dream. Now, this is the second dream that Joseph had concerning Jesus. He had one before Jesus was born, and he will have two more before Matthew chapter 2 is over. The dreams, however, are not as important as Joseph's reaction to them. You see, without hesitation, Joseph humbly did what the angel told him to do. The result of this dream was a trip to Egypt. And from Joseph's response to God's visions, we can see how we should live our lives as well. You see, we need to understand that there's a big difference between doing something because it's good and doing something because it's of God. So how do we tell the difference? Now, Joseph was able to tell the difference, and as we follow their trip to Egypt, maybe we can too. Because we can see three things about this trip. First, this trip took faith. It took faith. Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 through 15. Matthew chapter 2, beginning in verse 13. When they had gone, that's the wise men we talked about last Sunday. When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, he said, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, out of Egypt I called my son. Matthew justifies the move to Egypt by referring to an obscure prophecy from Hosea chapter 11, verse 1. Now, most scholars agree that Hosea was not talking about the Messiah, but primarily talking about Israel's escape from slavery. But it can still put the context here, inasmuch as Jesus has freed us from the slavery of sin. However, Mary and Joseph probably did not think about Hosea when they packed that evening, nor did they see their move of fulfilling any prophecy. They were simply acting on faith. God told them to move, So they moved. Now granted, Joseph's family did not have many material possessions, so it would not take much packing to get ready. But we see in our text an urgency to go. As soon as Joseph woke up from his dream, he shook Mary awake, told her his dream. They packed up the baby with the few possessions they had, including the gold that the wise men brought, that was really coming in handy now, and headed in a southwestern direction out of town. So by the time Herod's soldiers knocked on their door the next morning, they were long gone. Now Egypt was about the same distance from Bethlehem as it is from here to New York City. Although it's a long drive, and one that we don't make every day, it would not be that hard for us to make that drive. By car, it takes a little over 4 hours to get there. Unfortunately, Mary and Joseph did not have a car, nor did they have an interstate highway connecting Bethlehem and Egypt. They had to walk. How many of you know what it's like to take a baby on a long trip? It's not fun, is it? Well, even if the baby does not ride well, at least we can still ride in relative comfort. And maybe as we go along the road, stop once in a while and stretch our legs and get the baby out and do a little change of scenery. And if we can't make it in one day, we can pull into a nice motel for the evening. Mary and Joseph's trip would probably have taken 30 days by foot. Can you imagine? They had no air conditioner as they crossed the desert, nor did they stay at a Holiday Inn during the evenings. Instead, after walking 10 to 12 miles, maybe 20 miles on a really good day, Joseph would find a place that had some water and maybe shelter so they could camp. He would build a fire, he'd look for some food, either from a friendly nearby resident or a nice fruit tree. And then the three of them would huddle together to sleep, hoping that there were no thieves on the road. To take a journey like that in those days required a lot of faith. In 1990, we moved from Illinois to Kentucky, and it was 2 weeks after J.D. was born. It was a miserable experience. But we had family nearby, and we went to a church that supported us, and the trip there only took 1 day. What was Mary and Joseph thinking? As far as we know, Mary and Joseph knew no one in Egypt. They'd never been there before. All they knew about the place was what they had heard growing up. You know, stories about Pharaoh and Joseph and slavery. Now, there was a sizable Jewish community in Egypt, so there was a place they could go to where people spoke the same language and had the same values, but they went there with no job, no prospects, no family, nowhere to live, and no idea how long they were going to be there. Simply put, Mary and Joseph made this trip as an act of faith. Do we ever step out on faith like that today? We might argue that for Joseph to move his family was easy because, after all, he had a dream and an angel told him to go. But think about that. It was still just a dream. And although they put more stock in dreams back then, it was only something Joseph imagined in his head. How could he trust it? Maybe the whole thing was caused by seeing those strange-looking wise men from a foreign country. It wasn't like Mary had the same dream to confirm Joseph's dream, nor did anyone else offer any affirmation. I've told this story several times, but it makes the point. Floodwaters surrounded a man's home, and he was told to evacuate. Instead, he decided to pray for God to rescue him. As he sat on the roof and the waters rose, a boat came by offering to take him to safety. No thanks, he said, I'm waiting for God to save me. As the water covered his roof, a helicopter came by and lowered a rope. No thanks, the man replied, I'm waiting for God to save me. Shortly thereafter, the man drowned. Waking up in heaven, the man said to God, I'm glad to be here, but why didn't you answer my prayers to rescue me? And God replied, I sent a boat and a helicopter, what more do you want? You see, faith involves being sensitive enough to hear God's calling. God is trying to tell you something today. Maybe through the advice of godly people, maybe by our own common sense, and definitely by what we read in the Bible. Do you have faith enough to listen, to respond? Well, next we see the trip took trust. The trip took trust. Verses 16 through 18. These are some of the most disturbing verses in the Christmas story, and ones that we don't like to dwell on too much. Verses 16 through 18. When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning. Rachel weeps for her children, and refusing to be comforted because they are no more. Herod was such a cold-blooded, raving madman that this story of him killing the babies does not even make secular history books. The idea of bloodshed and death as a Christmas story is foreign to our way of thinking anymore. But Herod was so crazy that compared to the other awful things he did, this was minor. This was relatively unimportant. You see, Herod, among other things, Herod had 9 wives and a bunch of kids, none of whom he trusted. At various times, all of his children were either banished or killed because he thought they weren't loyal to him. And so were his wives. Herod, before he died, had some Jewish blood in him, and Herod would not eat unclean meat. So there was a saying that it was safer to be a pig in Herod's court than a relative. Before he died, he forced all the leaders of Judea to go to the Hippodrome, which was a giant stadium. If they did not go, it would have them killed. So they all had to go there. He locked them up in the stadium, and he gave orders that when he died, they were to all be killed. Fortunately, when he died, cooler heads prevailed, and they were all released. But Herod, you see, in his twisted mind, thought that when he died, everyone would be in mourning if one person from every family in Judea also died. So he had no hesitation about shedding blood, and killing babies was no big deal to him. Well, in Bethlehem, there were probably not more than a handful of babies, if that many, when Jesus was born. There's no record of how many, if any, babies died that day because of Herod's command, but the order does fit in with this style of governing. Now, obviously, even one innocent baby being killed is one too many. And I don't want to demean what happened, because I do often wonder, how did the families who lost infants respond to that tragedy? Maybe, hopefully, like in the Hippodrome, cooler heads prevailed and nobody was killed. But Herod was angry at being outwitted, and was going to take his anger out on someone. Obviously, he knew how old Jesus was, and he could have simply asked and found the baby. But at this point, Herod was so angry, he wasn't looking for Jesus. He just wanted to kill some people. Most scholars believe it was not that long after Mary and Joseph left before Herod's soldiers arrived. If they hopped on their horses and spread out, they probably could have found Jesus fairly easily down the road. Instead, the soldiers didn't want to do that. So Herod was going to shed blood of innocent victims in a random act of violence. The terror of life under Herod was not new to the Jews. But how would we respond to a similar horrific situation? How would it affect our faith in God? How would it shape our attitude? Those are questions I hesitate to ask, because I'm not sure how even I would handle a random act of violence like that on my family. Still, what these few verses remind us of is that sometimes bad things not only happen to good people, but sometimes there's absolutely no reason for the tragedy at all. I still look back on our adoption of the girls and wonder why. We thought we were doing the right thing by rescuing them from the cycle of abuse and neglect and tried to offer them a secure and loving home. But by and large, the girls have fallen back to a lifestyle that's contrary to everything we ever taught and modeled for them over the years. It doesn't ease the pain much, but at least I can rationalize that they have free will and for whatever reason they've chosen to live the kind of lives they live. But then I think of Candy, the second of the four girls. As a little girl, she was the most loving, kind-hearted, and sweet child you could ever want to meet. But because of emotional and psychological problems, she was unable to live with us throughout her teenage years. Now, most kids change when they become teens, but Candy became uncontrollable with flashes of anger. She was a real danger to herself and others. To this day, we do not know why God, in spite of our prayers, allowed that to happen. She's still a mess, but whenever something happens here in D.C., or something with the weather, or something else happening, any kind of protest or anything in D.C., she'll always give me a call, and she'll ask if I'm all right. It reminds me, I just need to keep trusting that everything will be okay. So many of you this morning understand exactly the kind of hurt and pain that I'm talking about. In our own lives, a spouse or a child died an untimely death. The doctor's report did not come back good, or work and personal finances have collapsed around you, leaving you with nothing. And as we sit in the quiet of our room, we sometimes raise our fist to God and demand to know why. The truth is, there are many things in our lives that we will never have the answer for. Gene Stewart was an older man in Charleston, Illinois, that was going through a lot of medical issues. People would always ask him how he was doing, and he would always say the same old tired cliche, one day at a time. Now that's called trust. We don't know all the whys and wherefores, but we know who holds our hand. Although Mary and Joseph were told to go to Egypt to protect Jesus, they surely still had a lot of questions. Questions like, where will we live? How will we support ourselves? Why do we have to give up all our family and friends? How long are we going to be gone? The residents of Bethlehem must have had questions as well, like, why my baby? Why didn't God protect us? Doesn't He care? In our daily lives, we have questions too. Now, that's okay. That's natural. However, the real question we need to address each day is, how much will we trust God? Finally, we see in our text that the trip took obedience. Obedience. Verses 19 to 23. After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who are trying to take the child's life are dead." So he got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning in Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee, and he went and lived in a town called Nazareth. So was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, "He will be called a Nazarene." It was just a couple of years at most before Jesus had another dream, telling him that it was safe to move back. It obviously would not have taken much to convince Mary and Joseph to go home, and they immediately made plans to return. The only problem now was Archelaus, Herod's son, who now ruled over Judea. You see, Archelaus was a chip off the old block, and Mary and Joseph knew that if they returned to Bethlehem or Jerusalem or anywhere in Judea with their baby, Archelaus would try to kill Jesus. So Joseph had yet another dream and was told to go to Nazareth. Now, Nazareth wasn't so bad. It was in Galilee, which was a separate district from where Archelaus ruled, and it was where Mary and Joseph had come from way back before Jesus was born. They had family and friends there. They knew the area well. Joseph could start up his carpentry business again, and it would be a very safe place to raise Jesus. The only thing was, Nazareth was off the beaten path. It wasn't the place that kings came from, and it was very much a backwater town. In John chapter 1, the apostle Nathanael asked, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" Yet Mary and Joseph not only moved back to Nazareth, but settled down there and remained in that rural area, which is about 80 miles north of Jerusalem, for the rest of Joseph's life. As far as we know, Joseph had no more dreams. But we do know that even after Archelaus died, and it became safe for them to return to Jerusalem or Bethlehem, where kings come from, they stayed in Nazareth. Archelaus died when Jesus was around 10. And maybe that's why Joseph and Mary took Jesus, according to Luke chapter 2, to the temple when he was 12 years old, because it was now safe to go there. But there seemed to have been no thought of returning there to live. It's one thing, you see, to obey when we understand and agree with the command. But another thing altogether when we don't see the logic behind the order. Why would God make Mary and Joseph move from Nazareth to Bethlehem to Egypt, back to Nazareth, all in less than 10 years? If you have moved before, you know what a headache that is. My son and daughter-in-law moved 3 times this past year, and they're tired of it. And they're just a young couple with very little possessions, but they're tired of it. It's hard to do. Notice the subtle but important change in Joseph at the end of this chapter in Matthew, from what he was like in Matthew chapter 1. Now, Joseph was always a believer in God, and he always wanted to do what was right, but he thought, like many of us do today, that he knew the right thing to do. We try so very hard to be good and to do the right thing, but all our good works mean nothing to God. All our good works are never enough to save us. That's what Joseph had to learn. You see, the right thing to do when he heard Mary was pregnant was to quietly divorce her. And that would have been his plan. That was his plan. You see, he could have publicly exposed her to her shame, and if he had done that according to the law, she would be stoned for adultery. And he'd be pitied as that poor righteous man whose fiancée cheated on him. But Joseph was a good man. So instead of blaming Mary and disgracing her, he was willing to quietly divorce her, which would make everyone think that maybe Joseph had gotten her pregnant and then left her. How dare he do that? He was going to take the blame for Mary. He was going to take the blame himself. However, God had something else in mind. And when they found themselves in Bethlehem, they figured the right thing to do would be to stay there, because the King of the Jews was prophesied to come from that little town. They were good people. They wanted to do what was right. But God still had something else in mind. Then no sooner had they settled in Egypt when they were told to go back, and they went in spite of the danger. And when God said go to Nazareth, he did not question the decision, but obeyed. Joseph was always a good man, but now he was an obedient man as well. We had a basset hound named Gatsby who never learned obedience. He knew very well what he was supposed to do and not do, but if he thought I was not around, he would do what he wanted to do instead. Now, for some reason, Gatsby loved to chew on used Kleenexes from our wastebasket in the bathroom. He loved that. It was so bad that we had to keep the bathroom door closed at all times. The only time he wouldn't bother the trash can in the kitchen or the trash can down in the living room. He only bothered the one in the bathroom where the Kleenexes were at. The only time we could leave the door open was when I was standing in the hallway by the bathroom, because he wouldn't go in there if I was watching him. Now, there were times when I would walk in the house in the afternoon, and as soon as he saw me, he would run to his kennel because he knew he's in trouble. Chances are he had gotten in the bathroom while I was gone and dug through the garbage. See, he knew what it meant to obey, but he would rather not. Occasionally, I would find Kleenexes hidden under his blanket in his kennel. It was his guilty pleasure, his little treat for himself. So whenever he saw me going over to clean his kennel, he would take off and run to another part of the house, usually to wherever JD was, protection. Are you tired of running and hiding from God because of the sin in your life? We know very well what we're supposed to do. And if we think God isn't watching, we often do what we want to do instead. Obedience to God makes our trip in this world a whole lot easier. Won't you obey Him today?